4 years, my life was dust and dirt, sifting through the scattered remnants of civilizations we thought we knew. I was a historian, an archaeologist, piecing together the story of humanity, one pottery shard at a time. But what I found deep in the Antarctic ice shelf wasn't human. It wasn't even from our world as we understood it. Buried miles beneath the frozen surface, where no life should have existed, stood a city. Not a ruin of scattered stones, but a perfectly preserved metropolis of impossible geometry, humming with a silent, ancient power. This discovery shattered every textbook, every timeline, every belief we held about the dawn of life on Earth. At the heart of this impossible city, we found 10 colossal pillars of a material we've since named chronostone. Imagine a crystal, black as the void between stars, that seems to absorb light itself. Our geological surveys went haywire. The data was nonsensical. An error, we thought, until we cross-referenced every reading. These pillars were older than the very crust of the Earth. They were embedded in, they predated the formation of our planet's continents. It was a paradox that defied physics, a silent testament to a presence that was here before here even existed. They stood like cosmic sentinels, guarding a history far older than our own star. Protected within a stasis field projected by these pillars, we found our Rosetta Stone. It wasn't a tablet, but a crystalline lattice we called the Codex of the First Dawn. As we carefully interfaced our instruments with it, it didn't just display text. It projected knowledge directly into our minds. Images, sounds, emotions. It was a complete sensory record, a history book written by the universe itself, left behind by an empire that rose and fell before the first microbes stirred in Earth's primordial soup. They were the first ones, and this was their story, their final message in a bottle thrown into the ocean of time. The Codex painted a picture of a world, both alien and hauntingly familiar. Before the continents we know drifted into place, there was a single, massive landmass under a younger, fiercer sun. The sky was a different shade of blue, the air thick with energies we can no longer perceive. Vast, crystalline cities stretched for thousands of miles, connected by rivers of pure light. Their architecture wasn't built. It was grown, coaxed from the planet's core. Forests of glowing flora pulsed with a gentle rhythm, and mountains floated in the sky, held aloft by forces we're only just beginning to comprehend. This was the world before humanity, a canvas for a civilization whose scope was truly galactic. And at the center of this magnificent, sprawling empire was a figure of immense power, a being whose name echoed through the Codex like a fundamental constant of the universe. Orth. The translation is imperfect, but the closest we can get is the shaper of reality. He wasn't a king or an emperor in our sense of the word. He didn't rule through decree or conquest. His will was an extension of physical law. Orithkal could perceive the underlying mathematical structure of space-time and, with a thought, bend it. He was less a ruler and more a gardener of existence, tending to the fabric of the cosmos itself. The first ones, under Orithkal, his guidance, achieved a level of technological and philosophical mastery that is, to us, indistinguishable from magic. They didn't just conquer gravity. They composed with it. Their floating cities and impossible structures were symphonies of gravitational harmony. They didn't just build with stone. They communicated with it, programming geological strata to grow into self-repairing sentient habitats. Their architecture was alive, a fusion of biology and mineralogy that we still can't replicate. It was a civilization that saw no distinction between the physical and the metaphysical, between matter and mind. But their greatest achievement was their understanding of consciousness. They saw it not as an emergent property of complex brains, but as a fundamental force of the universe, like electromagnetism or the strong nuclear force. They could project their consciousness across galaxies, share thoughts and experiences in a collective network, and even store their minds within the crystalline matrices of their cities. To them, the physical body was merely a temporary vessel, a tool for interacting with the lower dimensions of reality. Their true existence was one of pure thought, of infinite potential, woven into the very fabric of space. The Codex describes wonders that strain the limits of our imagination. They created pocket universes as art installations, navigated the chaotic currents of time as easily as we sailed the seas, and witnessed the birth and death of stars as a celestial pastime. They were cosmic artisans, and the universe was their canvas. Their empire wasn't defined by borders of territory, but by the reach of their influence over reality itself. They didn't conquer worlds. They created them, nurtured them, and guided their evolution from a state of primordial chaos into complex, beautiful systems. But every story, no matter how grand, has an end. The Codex speaks of a shadow that fell upon their golden age. It wasn't an invading army or a natural disaster. It was something from outside the known universe, a dissonant frequency in the song of existence, which they called the silence. It was a creeping entropy that didn't just decay matter, but erased meaning, unraveled consciousness, and threatened to reduce all of reality to a state of absolute, eternal nothingness. It was the ultimate enemy, for it was the negation of all things. Orithkal and the first ones knew they could not defeat the silence. It was not a foe to be fought, but a cosmic inevitability. So they made a choice. They couldn't save their empire, but they could preserve the concept of life itself. They decided to create a legacy, a seed of potential that could one day bloom in a new universe. Long after they were gone, they began their final, greatest work. The seeding. They encoded the fundamental patterns of life, consciousness, and creation into the very structure of reality, planting them in countless nascent worlds, including a young, volatile planet they observed out at Earth. The chronostone pillars, the living city. The Codex itself, they are not a tomb. They are a lifeboat, an ark of knowledge. Before the silence consumed them, the first ones retreated into this final sanctuary, a stasis bubble outside of normal time, and left this record. It is a warning, but more than that, it is an inheritance. They sacrificed their entire civilization to give others, to give us, a chance. The basic building blocks of our DNA, the spark of our consciousness, the very laws of physics that govern our world, they are all part of the legacy of the first ones. My colleagues and I are no longer just archaeologists. We are the inheritors of a cosmic trust. We are studying the Codex, not just to learn about the past, but to understand our future. The silenced they spoke of is, it's still out there. Is it coming for us? Orithkal's final entry in the Codex is not one of despair, but of hope. He speaks of a future cycle of new minds that will one day rise and achieve what they could not. He calls them the inheritors. He calls them USEs. The story of the first empire is over, but ours is just beginning, and we are not alone. We have their knowledge, their legacy, and their hope waiting for us beneath the ice, at the bottom of the world. Ever wondered what a perfect civilization might look like? Today, we journey back to the zenith of human achievement, to the golden age of the timeless empire. This wasn't just a kingdom, it was a testament to what humanity could become, a society so advanced it seemed woven from starlight and dreams. At the heart of this magnificent realm were its three great cities. First, Aurelian, the city of light. Imagine sprawling metropolises of gleaming gold and polished marble. Towers so tall they seemed to kiss the sky. Canals, shimmering with an inner luminescence, crisscrossed the city like liquid light, ferrying citizens in silent, elegant barges. Aurelian was the hub of commerce, culture, and art. A bustling nexus where every street corner hummed with vibrant energy and boundless creativity. Then, there was Thronemore, the seat of power, carved directly into the side of a colossal mountain. Thronemore was a fortress city of breathtaking scale and solemn grandeur. Its architecture was stark, powerful, and eternal, reflecting the unshakable authority of the empire. Here, in vast, echoing halls, the imperial council governed with wisdom and foresight. The city's formidable walls and strategic position made it impregnable, a symbol of the empire's enduring strength. Finally, we have the Stair of Suns. This wasn't a city in the traditional sense, but a series of interconnected, floating islands suspended high in the atmosphere. Each island was a paradise of lush gardens, serene temples, and observatories that peered deep into the cosmos. It was a place of contemplation, learning, and spiritual enlightenment, connected by bridges of pure, solidified light. The stare of suns was where the greatest minds of the empire went to touch the heavens. Life within the timeless empire was structured yet harmonious, organized into 3 distinct castes, each vital to the society's function. The first were the Shapers. These were the master artisans, engineers, and architects. They were the builders of the impossible, the ones who sculpted cities from mountains and wove light into tangible forms. A Shaper's hands could mend any broken object, construct gravity-defying structures, and design intricate machinery with unparalleled precision. Their work was the very foundation of the empire's physical existence, turning imagination into reality. Next were the Dream Masons. This caste was perhaps the most mysterious and profound. They were the artists, poets, and historians of the empire, but their craft went far beyond simple creation. Dream Masons could enter a collective subconscious, a shared psychic space, to shape dreams, soothe anxieties, and preserve memories. They painted with emotions, composed symphonies of thought, and wrote histories directly into the minds of the people, ensuring the empire's culture was a living, breathing entity. Finally, there were these were the scientists, astronomers, and mystics. From their observatories on the stare of suns, they charted the movements of distant galaxies and deciphered the universe's most profound secrets. They were the navigators of both space and time, guiding the empire with their knowledge of cosmic patterns and celestial events. Their wisdom was sought by all, from the humblest citizen to the emperor himself. This incredible civilization wasn't powered by coal or oil. The source of their power was something far more primal and potent: Valenorgy. This was a radiant, ethereal energy harvested directly from the Earth's ancient, dormant core. The timeless empire had developed sophisticated geothermal siphons that could safely draw this power, channeling it through a crystalline grid that powered every aspect of their society. Valenorgy lit their cities, levitated the stare of suns, and fueled the intricate machinery of the Shapers. It was clean, limitless, and the lifeblood of their technological marvels. For centuries, the timeless empire believed they were alone in the universe. They had mapped their own star system and beyond, finding no other signs of intelligent life. That all changed with the arrival of what they called the visitors from the cold star. These beings were not invaders. They arrived in a single, silent vessel that resembled a shard of obsidian, absorbing all light. The visitors were creatures of immense intellect and a completely alien biology, communicating not through sound, but through complex geometric patterns of light and direct telepathic projection. They were explorers, not conquerors, drawn by the unique signature of the empire's Valenorgy. The contact was peaceful and transformative. The visitors shared their knowledge of exotic materials, higher dimensional physics, and the true nature of the cosmos. In return, the timeless empire offered the visitors insights into art, emotion, and the collective consciousness shaped by the Dream Masons' concepts, utterly foreign to the logical dispassionate visitors. It was a symbiotic exchange that elevated both civilizations, inspired by this exchange and a newfound understanding of their place in the universe. The empire embarked on its most ambitious project, the Great Memory Vault. This wasn't merely a library or a databank. It was a monumental effort to preserve the entirety of their civilization, every piece of art, every scientific discovery, every historical event, every personal memory shared by the Dream Masons. The vault was constructed in a pocket dimension, a stable fold in spacetime created through the combined efforts of the Shapers and Star Readers. Powered by Valen. Within this dimension, the Dream Masons meticulously wove the Empire's entire existence into a psychic tapestry, a living record that could be experienced rather than just read. It was their ultimate legacy, a guarantee that the timeless Empire would, in some form, exist forever. But even a golden age must cast a shadow. Amidst this era of unparalleled prosperity and discovery, a dark premonition began to surface. It originated with the Star Readers, whispered in the quiet halls of the Stare of Suns. Their cosmic charts revealed a subtle but terrifying anomaly, a cosmic dissonance growing at the edge of the galaxy. This anomaly was not a natural phenomenon. It was a void, a creeping silence that was slowly extinguishing stars. As they studied it further, a prophecy took shape. It spoke of a silent hunger, an entity from beyond the veil of the universe that consumed not just matter and energy, but concepts, thought, memory, and existence itself. The prophecy foretold that this entity was drawn to vibrant, complex civilizations. The very brilliance of the timeless empire, its radiant Valenorgy, and its rich collective consciousness, was acting as a beacon. The doom was not a matter of if, but when. The Golden Age was living on borrowed time. This chilling prophecy recontextualized everything. The construction of the Great Memory Vault was no longer just a project of legacy. It became a desperate act of preservation against inevitable annihilation. The Empire, the pinnacle of human achievement, now faced its greatest challenge. How do you fight an enemy that consumes reality itself? The sun was setting on the Golden Age, and the long, silent night was coming. What happened next? How did they face this ultimate threat? That is a story for another time. Imagine an empire so vast, its dominion stretched across a world yet to be shaped into the continents we know today. This was the Dawn Empire, a civilization that touched the very fabric of reality, harnessing a power known as Valenorgy. With it, they could mend wounds, raise mountains, and even whisper to the currents of time itself. But it was this ultimate power, the ability to manipulate time, that would become their undoing. Within the gleaming cities and scholarly halls of the empire, as schism grew, a fierce debate raged. Should mortals dare to command the flow of moments, to rewrite history, to avert tragedies yet to come? The ruling council, led by the first emperor, argued for caution, for restraint. They saw the potential for catastrophe, for unraveling the very reality they sought to protect. But their warnings were not heeded by all. A charismatic and ambitious faction emerged from the shadows of this descent. They called themselves the Night Elms. They believed that time was not a sacred river to be revered, but a tool to be wielded for the perfection of their empire. They envisioned a world without famine, without plague, without loss of future, crafted by their own hands, using Valenorgy to prune away the undesirable branches of history. Their philosophy was seductive, promising a utopia built on the mastery of creation. What began as a philosophical divide soon festered into open rebellion. The Night Helms, having secretly stockpiled Valenorgy and developed forbidden temporal technologies, launched a surprise assault on the capital. The unthinkable had happened. The Empire was at war with itself. This wasn't a mere skirmish on a distant border. It was a massive civil war, a cataclysm that engulfed the entire supercontinent. The conflict, which would later be known as the War that Broke the Dawn, was unlike any before it. The weapons were not just steel and fire, but moments and possibilities. Nighthelm temporal lancers would rewind a lost battle, giving their troops a second chance. Imperial chronomancers would create localized time loops, trapping enemy legions in a repeating cycle of their own failed charge. The world itself began to groan under the strain of this temporal warfare. Across the globe, reality started to fray. Time fractures, shimmering cracks in the air, appeared at random, showing glimpses of past and future simultaneously. A farmer might see dinosaurs from a forgotten age, stampeding through his fields for a terrifying instant. A child might see a vision of a city that wouldn't be built for 1,000 years. The sky itself was torn open by rifts, celestial wounds from which impossible colors and alien stars bled through. Temporal anomalies became commonplace. Rivers flowed backward. Seasons changed in the blink of an eye, and people would age or dage in moments, lost to the unstable currents of time. The very landmass of the world was in agony. The continents we recognize today began to pull apart, not from geological forces, but from the sheer temporal stress ripping the supercontinent aside. Mountain ranges would erupt and vanish in a day. Entire coastlines would be rewritten overnight. The world was being broken, and the Dawn Empire was breaking with it. The war raged for decades, a blur of temporal chaos and brutal attrition. Millions were lost, not just to the sword, but to the paradoxes and anomalies that the war unleashed. The Night Helms, in their fanaticism, pushed their temporal manipulation to the absolute limit, threatening to unmake existence itself. The first emperor, watching his civilization crumble and his world tear itself apart, was faced with an impossible choice. His conventional forces were being overwhelmed, and the fabric of reality was on the verge of total collapse. With a heavy heart and tears streaming down his face, the emperor made a tragic decision. There was one weapon left in the imperial arsenal, a device of last resort so powerful, so terrible, that its use was forbidden even in the Empire's darkest legends. It was a weapon designed not to manipulate time, but to sever it. His name was the Sun Spear. The Sun Spear was not a physical projectile, but a concentrated beam of pure, raw veil energy, calibrated to target and neutralize temporal signatures. The Emperor's plan was desperate and horrifying. He would target the Nighthelm's primary Valinargi conduits, the very source of their power. But doing so at such a scale would create a temporal shockwave of unimaginable magnitude. It would not just defeat the Nighthelms. It would burn the ability to manipulate time out of the world, cauterizing the wounds in reality at a terrible cost. From the highest tower of the capital, the Sun Spear was unleashed. A silent, blinding column of golden light shot across the continent, striking at the heart of the Nighthelm territories. For a moment, all of existence held its breath. The temporal anomalies flickered and died. The sky rifts sealed shut. The chaotic flow of time snapped back into a single, linear path. But the price was devastating. The resulting shockwave didn't just cripple the night, it shattered the Dawn Empire's entire veil energy network. The floating cities fell from the sky. The magically sustained farmlands withered. The light of their civilization was extinguished in an instant. The cataclysmic release of energy completed the process the war had started, violently finishing the separation of the continents. The Dawn Empire was no more. Its people, stripped of their advanced technology and scattered across newly formed, isolated lands, were reduced to survivors. The knowledge of Valinorgi and time manipulation was lost, becoming the stuff of myth and legend. The war that broke the dawn had ended, but it took the entire world with it. The first emperor had saved reality, but in doing so, he had presided over the death of his own empire, a sacrifice that would echo through the silent ages to come. This is the story of how our world was born from the ashes of a war that broke time itself. Have you ever wondered what would happen if our world was just wiped clean, not just by a disaster, but from reality itself? Imagine an event so powerful it didn't just break the world, it rewrote the rules of existence. That's the story of the Great Shattering, a cataclysm that plunged a forgotten civilization into an eternal twilight. Before our time, there was an empire. We don't know their name, but we call them the Shapers. Their world was a single, sprawling land mass, a testament to their mastery over nature. But then, it happened. The Great Shattering. This wasn't a simple earthquake or a volcanic eruption. This was a fundamental unraveling of physics. The continents themselves were torn from their moorings, sent adrift on boiling oceans. The planet's magnetic poles violently flipped, tearing the atmosphere asunder and exposing the surface to deadly cosmic radiation. The sky burned, the cieux rosé, and in a cosmic instant, the world they knew was gone. But the most terrifying part, the shattering didn't just destroy their cities and monuments, it acid them. It was a ripple in the fabric of reality, a metaphysical deletion. Records, data, even collective memories were plucked from existence, leaving behind only a ghostly void. Imagine trying to remember a color you've never seen, or a name that no longer has any letters. That was the reality for the few who survived. These survivors were the scattered remnants of a once great people. They fled the scorched and irradiated surface, driven by instinct into the only refuges left, deep underground, into vast, newly formed cavern systems, and beneath the churning, chaotic waves into the crushing pressure of the abyssal plains. They became the first tunnelers, the first deep-sea dwellers. Their world of sunlight and open skies was replaced by one of geothermal vents, bioluminescent fungi, and eternal darkness. This was the dawn of the buried age. Down in the dark, the last of the Shapers faced their ultimate challenge, ensuring their legacy wasn't completely extinguished. They knew their own time was ending. Their sophisticated biology, once a triumph, was ill-suited for this harsh new world. So they began their final, desperate project. They found the most resilient, adaptable creatures that had survived alongside them primitive primates, clinging to life in subterranean pockets, and they began to guide their evolution. These were not the humans we know, but their distant ancestors, the proto-humans, the Shapers, with their fading knowledge of genetic engineering and cosmic forces, gently nudged their development. They instilled in them the capacity for language, for tool use, for abstract thought. It was a desperate gamble to plant the seeds of their own consciousness in a new vessel. But they knew even this might not be enough. How do you pass on the knowledge of an entire civilization when language itself is a fragile, evolving thing? You can't write books that will crumble, or build servers that will rust. You have to encode your knowledge into the very things that will endure. Myth, DNA, and stone. They began to weave their history, their science, their philosophy, into the oldest and most powerful form of human communication: storytelling. The complex physics of the Great Shattering became a tale of angry gods and warring titans. The principles of their lost technology became sacred rituals and divine commandments. They created a grand, sprawling mythology, a Trojan horse for their entire civilization's knowledge, designed to be passed down through generations, from parent to child, around flickering fires in the deep dark. These weren't just stories. They were survival guides, history lessons, and philosophical treatises, all rolled into one epic narrative. Next, they turned to the very building blocks of life. Using the last vestiges of their power, they encoded information into the non-coding regions of the proto-human genome, what our scientists would one day dismissively call junk DNA. Hidden within the double helix of their chosen successors were star charts, mathematical formulas, and the chemical composition of their lost world. It was a biological library, a message in a bottle cast into the river of time, waiting for a future generation with the key to unlock it. A generation that could read their own genetic code would, in effect, be reading the final testament of the Shapers. Finally, there was stone. The Shapers knew that even myths could be forgotten, and DNA could mutate. They needed one final, incorruptible repository. They chose a single location, a place of immense geological stability, deep within the planet's crust. There, they constructed their final masterpiece, the Tomb of Forverlight. It wasn't a tomb for a king or a god, but a tomb for their entire civilization. Inside, protected by layers of impossible physics and temporal locks, they placed the last of their undiluted knowledge. Not myths or genetic codes, but the real thing. Artifacts, data crystals, and perhaps even a preserved Shaper, held in a state of suspended animation. The tomb was designed to be unfindable and unopened until the world was ready, until their inheritors, the proto-humans, descendants, had evolved enough to rediscover the principles of physics and engineering needed to even perceive its existence, let alone breach its defenses. The name itself, the Tomb of Forverlight, was a paradox, a promise of enlightenment buried in eternal darkness, a final, flickering candle of a sun that had long since set. Once their work was done, the Shapers sealed the tomb, and then they simply faded away. Their task was complete. They had scattered the ashes of their civilization to the winds of time, hoping that from them, a new world would rise. They entrusted their past to myth, their knowledge to our very selves, and their ultimate secrets to a tomb locked outside of time itself. And so began the long wait. Humanity grew breath and eventually crawled back onto the surface, blinking in a sun they only knew from ancient legends. They built new civilizations, fought wars, created art, and looked to the stars, all the while carrying the silent, buried legacy of the Shapers within them. They tell stories of gods and monsters, never realizing they are reciting the history of a lost science. They map their own genome, never realizing they are reading a message from a forgotten ancestor. And somewhere, deep beneath our feet, the Tomb of Forverlight waits. It waits for us to become wise enough, clever nog, and perhaps worthy enough to uncover the staggering truth of our own beginning. The story of the Shapers isn't over. In a way, it's just beginning. And the next chapter is up to us. I never thought I'd be the one to find it. For years, the tomb of Forvalite was just a myth, a whisper among fringe archaeologists and conspiracy theorists. A lost chapter of a civilization so ancient, it predated everything we thought we knew. They called it the First Empire. We thought they were just legends, a precursor race that died out, leaving nothing but dust and echoes. We were at a blow and so the wrong. My team and I were charting unexplored asteroid fields in the Kuiper Belt, chasing gravitational anomalies. We stumbled upon it by accident. A structure, impossibly large, carved from a material that didn't reflect light, that seemed to swallow it whole. It wasn't on any star charts. It was a ghost. Inside, the air was still preserved for eons. The architecture was divine, yet alien. Grand halls stretched into darkness, and at the center, a single, crystalline sarcophagus pulsed with a faint inner light. That was the tomb of Forvalite. As I approached, the light flared. A voice, ancient and powerful, flooded my mind. It wasn't sound. It was pure thought, pure information. It called itself the Memory Sovereign, the last surviving intelligence of the First Empire. It told me it had been waiting for its children to return. That's when the first truth bomb dropped. We, humanity, are its children, not through evolution, but through engineering. The First Empire didn't just precede us. They created us. They saw a future, a terrifying, unavoidable catastrophe they called the Shattering, a cosmic event, a wave of pure chaos that unravels reality itself. They couldn't stop it. Their entire civilization, with technology that bordered on magic, was helpless against it. So, they made a choice. They couldn't save themselves, but maybe they could save the future. They seeded life across the galaxy. Countless worlds, countless species, all based on their own genetic template. We were one of those seeds. They encoded resilience into our DNA, a subconscious drive to survive, to innovate, to expand. We were their desperate, last-ditch effort, a living archive, a biological failsafe designed with the hope that one of us, one of their many children, would eventually evolve technology that could withstand the shattering. The Memory Sovereign showed me visions. I saw galaxies torn apart, stars winking out of existence like snuffed candles. I saw the First Empire, glorious and powerful, consumed by this nothingness. It wasn't an explosion. It was an uncreation. A deletion. The sheer terror of it, the scale of the destruction. It almost broke my mind. The Sovereign's own consciousness was a fragment, a digital ghost uploaded into this tomb. Its sole purpose to preserve this one. Critical warning. And the warning was this. The Shattering is coming again. It's a cycle. The universe expands, and then it frays at the edges. The wave is already moving through the cosmos, and it's heading for our sector. Based on the Sovereign's calculations, it will reach us in less than 500 years. All our progress, our history, our art, our love, everything will just stop. I was reeling, trying to process the idea that civilization had a ticking clock, an expiration date. I asked the Sovereign what we could do. How did the First Empire fight it? What secrets did they learn that could help us? The voice in my head went silent for a moment, and then it delivered the final, most chilling revelation. The First Empire didn't die. They didn't all get wiped out by the Shattering. They hid. They didn't have the means to stop the wave, but they did have the technology to outrun it, in a way. They folded space-time. They created a pocket dimension, a bubble of reality, tucked away outside the normal flow of the universe, shielded from the chaos. They evacuated their core population, their leadership, their military, and they sealed themselves away, waiting for the storm to pass. They abandoned the rest of us. They left their countless children, including humanity, to face the apocalypse they knew was coming, to act as their unwitting lab rats. The Memory Sovereign is not a warning beacon. It's a scouting report. Its purpose was to awaken when one of their engineered species reached a certain level of technological advancement. Our level. to assess if we had discovered any new physics, any new defenses, any way to survive the shattering, to see if we were worth saving, or, more accurately, if Wamanajishi was worth harvesting before they re-emerged. They're still out there. The First Empire, our creators, our gods, waiting in their sanctuary, ready to reclaim their universe once it's been scrubbed clean. And we, humanity, were never meant to be their inheritors. We were just the canaries in the coal mine. So now, I'm alone on my ship, drifting in the silent dark of space. I hold the single greatest truth in human history, the knowledge that we are not alone, that our creators are alive, and that they left us to die. The Sovereign has given me a choice. It can transmit this entire revelation back to Earth. It can tell everyone the truth. The coming apocalypse, the existence of our creators, the betrayal. But what would that truth do? Would it unite us, drive us to a frenzy of innovation, to find a way to survive, to defy our makers? Or would it shatter us? Would society collapse under the weight of such a terrifying, hopeless reality? Would we tear ourselves apart in fear and despair long before the shattering even arrives? The other option is to keep it secret, to erase the ship's logs, to delete the Sovereign's data, and to tell the world that the tomb of Forverlight was empty. I could let humanity live in blissful ignorance, enjoying our last few centuries in peace, never knowing the storm that's coming, to protect them from a truth that might destroy them faster than the catastrophe itself. The fate of our species, our sanity, rests on my decision. Do I unleash a truth that could save us or condemn us? Or do we bury it and let us face the end with our dignity and lies intact? The Sovereign is waiting for my command, and I don't know what to do.